This is the Global Wealth Show with Grant Conness and Andrew Costa.
At a young age, people very close to me were really hurt by the financial markets, and that drove me to be in this industry.
The vision was to change the industry.
Everybody calls this your nest egg, and I think of it as so much more than that. This is your life savings.
So being that guide, that coach for our clients is why we do what we do.
What we do could change someone's life.
The Global Wealth Show begins now.
Hi, I'm Megan Mozak, and welcome to the Global Wealth Show, the show that helps you plan the retirement you want. The skyrocketing cost of healthcare, long-term care, your mortgage. What will be your biggest expense in retirement? The answer will surprise you. And we share a strategy to use diversification to protect your assets from market volatility. And later, we answer your most pressing retirement questions in our Ask Global Wealth segment. Joining me, South Florida's financial advisors, Grant Conness and Andrew Costa from Global Wealth Management. Grant, Andrew, great to be back with you again.
Good to see you, Megan.
Great to be here, Megan.
We talked about some of those retirement expenses, and they are large. We're talking about health care, long-term care, even housing. But what is the biggest expense in retirement?
You know, Megan, it's actually taxes of all things. And as retirees, we all think, well, taxes are probably going to go down when we get into retirement. We're not going to be getting our income anymore, and we're not working anymore, and so they must go down. But what we see in our practice is a lot of times that's not the case. It actually ends up being your biggest expense in retirement, and so you really need to have a plan around. And the reason why is because we plan for retirement. We plan for retirement from an income standpoint and a planning standpoint and an investment standpoint. The one plan that we don't put in place as retirees is an actual retirement tax plan. And so what we're going to talk about today is the 4 tax traps that we see day in and day out at our practice.
And tax trap number 1, Megan, would be taxes on Social Security. The Social Security benefits, how and when you take your Social Security benefits, can have a major impact on not only your income in retirement, but how much you're going to be taxed on your benefit over time. And Social Security is that foundational piece. It's that foundational income piece that everybody can count on in retirement. And the thing is most people believe that when you take your Social Security benefits, there's 3 ways to take it. You can either take it at 62, which would be considered early retirement. You could take it at full retirement, whether that's 66 or 67, depending on what your birth date is. Or it could be 70, which would be considered late retirement. And in reality, there's over 500 different ways to claim a Social Security check, and there's about 2,000 different rules for those 500 ways. So it's not just as simple as, just taking it at 62, 66, or 70. You got to do a little bit of homework on that. And the reason why that's important is because how you take your Social Security benefits and when you take your Social Security benefits not only have an impact on your income, but it has an impact on your taxes. Up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can be taxed if you don't take it properly. It can also affect things like Medicare premiums. So you really want to make sure that you're taking the time to put a strategy in place on how and when you're going to take your Social Security benefits. Yeah,
85% of your Social Security benefit being taxed. I mean, it's just amazing. And you need to think about Social Security as a lifetime benefit. The after-tax lifetime effects. We pay into Social Security for so long during our lives. A lot of us just go, oh my gosh, I'm 62, I'm going to start taking it. Who knows how long I'm going to get it? And you have to look at it on the longevity side, and you have to have a tax plan in place because this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars back in your pocket if you just do it the right way and you put a plan together around it.
Andrew, Grant mentioned having that retirement income plan, and that all starts with those contributions we all make, 401ks, IRAs, which really is the easy part. Sometimes, though, getting that money out, that proves troublesome. Why is that?
Well, that actually brings us to tax trap number 2, Megan, and that's how and when you're going to take your distributions from your retirement plans. And, most people believe that, the prudent way to take income from your retirement plan, whether it's your 401k or your 403b or your IRA, is to wait till age 70, because at age 70 and a half, you're required to take your required minimum distribution, or your RMD. It starts at about 3.65% at age 70, and then it goes up pretty significantly over time. When in reality, it might not be as prudent to wait till age 70 to do that. It might make more sense from a tax standpoint to take your distribution sooner than waiting later in retirement to where you're going to get, more of a tax hit over time. And in fact, a lot of times we'll sit down with folks and they'll say, my CPA said that I need to wait till 70 in order to take my RMD. Well, that's not always the case, and a CPA can be a great advocate for you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that might be the best person to turn to when you're looking at a forward-looking tax strategy. CPAs are typically there to record history, what you did last year on your return, not necessarily what it is going forward. So you need to make sure that you have a plan in place on how you're going to take your distributions in retirement.
Definitely, having that strategy in place, you have to have that strategy in place for your 401ks and your IRAs. You have to look at it as a lifetime benefit. And at age 70 and a half, if you wait that long, what happens a lot of times is your income is such a great amount, your required minimum distribution is such a great amount, it trickles down to all your other income sources and creates a bigger tax burden on them. Social Security, Medicare, all the other things. So again, plan for it, have a tax plan in place.
The 4 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands of dollars. What are they? Grant and Andrew share those coming up. And later, are you properly diversified to protect your assets against market volatility? We've got a strategy you'll want to hear. But first, here's how you can contact Grant, Andrew, and the team at Global Wealth Management. We'll be right back.
You're watching The Global Wealth Show with Grant Conness and Andrew Costa.
Welcome back to the Global Wealth Show. I'm Megan Mozak. We're here with Grant Conness and Andrew Costa of Global Wealth Management, serving clients right here in South Florida. Now today we're talking about your greatest expense in retirement, which is taxes. Wow. And we have 4 tax traps we're talking about today. These are things that could needlessly cause us to lose money in retirement, which is something none of us want to do. So what's tax trap number 3?
Well, tax trap number 3, Megan, would be your estate plan and the taxes and making sure that you have a proper estate plan in place so that you're not paying too much taxes on your estate when you ultimately would pass away. And I think it's really important to understand this because we get so busy in life and you're saving for retirement and you're worrying about an income plan and you're talking about different investments and diversification. But what happens a lot of times is people don't think that estate plan is that important. We see a lot of times where prospective clients have done a great job saving. They might have $1 million or $2 million, and some people think that just estate planning is for the rich or the ultra affluent, if you will. And that's not necessarily true. Everybody should have some sort of basic trust and will and estate plan in place to make sure that, if and when something does happen to them at some point down their life, their family members are not scrambling or paying additional costs, whether that's probate cost or taxes and things like that. So you really got to make sure that you take the time to put that in place now, and sooner than later is definitely beneficial.
That actually reminds me of Kevin, who came in a couple weeks back, and Kevin was a retired police officer, and his father unfortunately had recently passed away, and his father had owned a small business in Fort Lauderdale, and he was a pretty successful, his father was, and his name was John, and he never put any planning in place, no estate planning, no trusts, no wills. And the reason why was because his father, although he was in his late 80s, he was in really good shape. He felt really good about his health. He used to walk the beach every day, a couple miles, and just was in really great health. So he just never really thought about putting this estate plan in place and this will and the trust and all that stuff. Well, what happened was Kevin and all his siblings, after his father passed away, had to deal with months and months. It was almost a year of probate and decisions that were out of their hands, the court making these decisions, costs and fees, dealing with attorneys, figuring out where all the accounts were, additional double taxation on all the IRAs and the 401ks. It was a complete nightmare for Kevin and his family, and all it needed to be was just a little bit of planning, earlier in his father's life. And it could have just been a very easy transition, which is what we all want for our loved ones.
And I'll say, Megan, for every Kevin story of the world, there's the Mary stories of the world. And Mary was a dear client of ours for years and had passed away a couple years ago. And she had 4 adult children who are beneficiaries, and she did take the time to plan properly. She had her trust in place. She updated it on an annual basis. Anytime there was additional tax laws and things of that nature, she was very diligent about doing the necessary estate planning. So when that time came, her children were able to come into the office, and we were able to facilitate, her estate in a very seamless process. So taking the time to make sure that you do the proper estate planning can save you, hundreds of thousands of dollars in, taxes and costs and things like that. So it's really important to make sure that you take the time to put a plan in place for that.
Makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Grant and Andrew, we hear a lot about asset allocation when we talk about retirement, but something we don't hear a lot about is tax diversification. Why is that?
Well, you want to make sure that you diversify your savings amongst different tax types. And so what I mean by that is a lot of us end up, in our younger years just saving as much as we possibly can into our IRA, our 401k at work, our 403b, whatever it is. And those are pre-tax accounts. And that's great. Make sure you do it. But the thing is when you take that money out, it's fully taxable. There's no way really around it. You want to make sure, if possible, to try and diversify and have some investments in individual, mutual funds and stocks and bonds in your individual name, and maybe some insurance-based products, so that you can start to spread out the way you distribute your assets in retirement, your income in retirement, and lower your overall tax basis. We put a strategy together for you, an actual tax strategy around this type of a thing.
And I think the easiest way to look at this, Megan, is it's kind of a three-bucket approach, if you will, as it comes to taxes and diversification. You have your tax always accounts, and that might be like your brokerage accounts or your mutual funds or your stocks. Those are investments that are always going to be taxed on an annual basis. You're going to get a 1099 at the end of the year, for example. And then you have your tax deferred accounts, and that might be like your IRAs or your 401ks or your 403bs, or it might be a tax deferred annuity. And those are investments that are not going to be taxed until you ultimately pull money out, and then you're going to get taxed on that money. And then the third bucket, if you will, is what we call tax rarely accounts. And those are going to be things like life insurance, distributions from life insurance, or income or withdrawals from life insurance, or it could be municipal bonds, which are tax-free bond investments. So making sure that you're properly diversified amongst those three different categories also can have a major impact in terms of how your income and your assets are taxed in retirement.
When we come back, Grant and Andrew share some tips on diversification that can help protect your retirement assets from market swings. And later, we'll answer some of your questions. But first, here's how you can contact Grant, Andrew, and the team at Global Wealth Management.
You're watching The Global Wealth Show with Grant Conness and Andrew Costa.
Welcome back to the Global Wealth Show. In today's Global Perspectives, Grant shares with us some key strategies for controlling volatility.
Many investors find investing to be very complicated and confusing. And the reason for that is most investors don't have the time, the expertise, or the interest in studying the stock and bond market every day. In fact, most of the clients that we work with, they just want to know that they have a solid game plan in place to make sure they don't get hurt the next time the market does collapse. And they have someone like us that has their back to make sure it's being done properly. So we developed a strategy in which we call the 3 worlds of money. And every investment that you can think of within the investment universe fits within the 3 worlds of money. The 3 worlds of money consist of the market world of money, the protection world of money, and the steady income world of money. So the market world of money is going to be your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities, ETFs. Anything that trades in the stock and bond market is going to be found here. Down here we have the protection world of money, and we divide that into 2, principal and income protection. Principal protection is going to be your bank accounts, money markets, CDs, fixed annuities, government bonds, investments in which you cannot lose your principal. And then income protection are going to be investments that, whether you live till you're 90 or 120 years old, that you'll never run out of money. So like a hybrid annuity with an income benefit or a personalized pension, that's going to fit over here. And then up here we have what we call the steady income or the alternative investment world. And those are investments that do not correlate with the stock and bond market. That's where every investment is housed. Now with every investment, as investors, we want these 3 attributes. We want safety, we want liquidity, and we want growth and income. So if you're going to design the perfect investment, you'd have all 3 of those attributes. The problem is you can only have 2 of those 3 attributes in each world of money. So for example, if you think about a stock here in the market world, Well, a stock's going to give you growth and income potential and liquidity. You can sell your stock whenever you want, but stocks are not that safe of an investment in general. Now think about a CD down here in the protection world. Well, a CD is going to give you safety from the stock market and liquidity, but you're not going to get a whole lot of growth and income out of your CDs today. And then finally, if you think about like a Walgreens on the corner down the street, think about that real estate, for example. That's going to give you safety from the stock market, growth and income potential, but you can't just hit a button and sell that Walgreens, so you're going to give up a little bit of liquidity in order to own that investment. So our objective when we're designing plans for clients is to find that sweet spot right in the middle there where we're getting safety, liquidity, and growth and income using the three worlds of money. The problem is most time when we go through our retirement roadmap review process, we find that clients' diversification is simply over here in the market world, where they might be 60% equities, 40% fixed income, or 70% fixed income and 30% equities. Well, that might sit right over here just in that one world. And if I had to draw that on the map, that might be somewhere down here. We got to get that back to the middle there. And the reason why that's important is because as an investor, and when we go through the next market correction and you know that you don't have all of your money sitting over here in this world, it gives you a lot more confidence and a lot more clarity as an investor. And that is the three worlds of money.
Coming up next on the Global Wealth Show, Andrew and Grant answer questions from viewers just like you. Stay with us.
You're watching the Global Wealth Show with Grant Conness and Andrew Costa.
I'm Megan Mozak, and it's now time to hear from you in this week's Ask Global Wealth segment. So Grant, Andrew, you ready for this?
We're ready.
Let's do it.
All right, first question comes from Marie, and Marie is from Coral Springs. She asks, can you explain the term rebalancing? I keep seeing it in retirement planning articles, and I don't really think I understand what it is.
Well, Marie, that's a really good question, and it can be a little bit complicated, and it's very important to rebalance your portfolio. So let's just kind of go through it. I think the easiest way to think about rebalancing is think about kind of a boat. If you've been on a boat and you're out in the ocean or you're in the intercoastal in South Florida and you have a bunch of people on the boat and they all go to one side of that boat. You know, the boat starts to tilt over, and if you had too many people, I mean, it could literally flip over. You'd want to rebalance the amount of people so that there's equal amounts of people on both sides and your boat stays kind of steady and everybody's okay. Well, it's the same thing with investments. Let's say you had two stocks, and just to make it sound real simple, you had two stocks, you had $50,000 in one stock, and you had $50,000 in the other stock. And one stock went from $50,000 to $100,000, and the other stock just stayed at $50,000. It didn't do much. Well, now you're out of balance on that one stock. There's a lot of weighting towards that stock that's done really well. And because of that, there's a lot of risk that one stock that has done very well can now collapse and come way back down. What you'd want to do in that kind of a scenario is you'd want to take some chips off the table, just like the boat, and put them on the other side. So now you're back in balance and there's not too much weighting in each one of those stocks. Now, in real life, it becomes a lot more complicated than that because we don't just have usually two stocks. You have maybe 30, 40, 50 different investments in your portfolio, but the same rule applies. You want to stay in balance. You don't want any individual position, fund, mutual fund, insurance product, stock, portfolio to be overweighted and unbalanced.
And I think the question also that always arises around there is, how often should you rebalance? What's the frequency on that? And, I think quarterly is a good, rule of thumb, no less than quarterly, to sit down and review your portfolio and making sure that any of this rebalancing that we're talking about needs to be done, because you don't want to be overweight one area or the other. So I think it's a proper time to do that, at least on a quarterly basis, to make sure you're in check.
Our next question comes from Jim in Fort Lauderdale. He asks, how much communication should I be having with my financial advisor? I only talk to him if I reach out to him with a question, and that rarely happens.
I think it's a great question, Jim, and I think it's something that we hear and see all the time in our practice here at Global Wealth Management. People had expressed to us that they, had been working with an advisor for years and they rarely hear from them, and the only time that they get their, questions answered is if they're literally reaching out to the advisor, when in turn, that advisor is managing your hard-earned assets, your life savings, if you will, and you should command or demand a better communication factor there. And I think that, making it a point to sit down with your advisor quarterly or semi-annually just to make sure that you're on the same page. If any life events have changed or anything of that nature, it's a good time to do that. And the thing is, when you're, say, 55 and you're saving for retirement, you might be, another 10 or 15 years before you're going to retire, and you might not think it's that important to have that communication level with your advisor, when in reality, that's the opportune time. If you're within 5 to 10 years out from retirement, you really need to be sitting down with an advisor and making sure your retirement's on track, and it gives you, also a lot more peace of mind as an investor as well.
Our next question is from Gary in Aventura, and he says, I'm 62 years old. My wife wants me to retire and start collecting Social Security, but I'm not ready to retire, and I honestly don't think we have enough money saved up. What's your recommendation on how we should go about this? I'd like to get on the same page with my wife without inciting World War III.
Well, Gary, that's a great question. And, that's so many individuals that come in and see us and go through that retirement roadmap review process have that same question that Gary had. Can I retire? Do I have enough money? Where do I take it from? When do I take my Social Security? What are the tax consequences going to be? And so in this retirement roadmap review that we put together for you, you actually end up with this written retirement income plan, and it shows you how you're going to take your income. Are you going to have enough? Is there a chance that you can run out of money? It shows you that you can actually do this or you can't. And after that, you'll know with clarity that, yeah, I'm fine. My wife and I are going to be good in retirement here, or maybe we need to work a little bit longer and save just a couple more years, and then we'll be good, and we'll know, that we're going to be okay throughout the rest of our lives.
And I think that's definitely the biggest question that we get asked a lot of times, Megan, is, have I saved enough for retirement? And from what I've saved in retirement, what does that equal in income? Because, you could save $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million, and, saving that money and earning is a lot different than actually how you're going to generate income from those dollars. So taking the time to put a formal written plan in place that literally spells out, this is what my Social Security income is going to be. These are what my pension payments or income is going to be. This is what my income is going to be from my IRA or my brokerage accounts or whatever that is. And when you can visualize that on paper as an investor, even if you're 5 to 10 years out from retirement, it allows you to really assess whether you're on track with your retirement planning, or there's adjustments that might need to be made to your plan, and you might need to work a little bit longer or what have you. So, definitely taking the time to put that plan in place gives you a lot more confidence and a lot more clarity to your financial picture.
Well, if you have questions, you can visit askglobalwealth.com or call the number on your screen. We might use your question in an upcoming show. And remember, what you've heard today, it's just information, unless you take action. So why wait? Call now. We hope to see you again next time. For Grant Conness and Andrew Costa and the team at Global Wealth Management, I'm Megan Mozak, hoping you have a great day and an even better retirement.